evening. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2020, and the time is 6:30 p.m. Meeting of the City of Greensburg Redevelopment Commission is called to order. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. And to comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the city requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. If we'll all stand, we'll begin our meeting with pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Darrell, would you conduct roll call, please?
Certainly will. Dr. Weigel?
Present.
Adam Wenzel? Present. Kim Dornick? Present. Jamie Herbert?
Present.
Carol Poling? Present. Counselor Stevens? Present.
How often do you call?
Thank you, sir. Approval of minutes. We are waiting on our February 20th meeting minutes, so we'll have to table that approval. We do have the minutes from our May 21st Zoom meeting. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no corrections, they stand approved as presented. Moving on to old business. Mr. May, City Engineer, would you give us a few updates, please?
Good evening. The most important one is Veterans Way Phase 2, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to share with you this evening that we are on the July 8th letting. All of the pieces are in place. Most of our utilities have relocated out of the way. The only one I'm aware of is ETC is working on relocating a couple of their lines. That should happen in the next month to 6 weeks. So if we have a successful July letting, we can anticipate our contractor receiving a notice to proceed by roughly the 1st of August. I'm sorry, 1st of September.
Okay.
1st of September. Which brings up the question, we will have to pay our 20% of the bid amount for construction up front. And so with the July 8th letting by that Friday, which I believe is the 10th, NDOT will make an award if everything is in order. By the Friday they will publish the results. We may be able to see unofficial results before then, and then they will make the award. So we should know by your next meeting, which will be the 16th, I believe.
Yes.
And you can authorize payment at that time. We had paid for the piece of right-of-way and got back $1 million reimbursement from the state. That money is still sitting in your account. Here at the city, we have, Marcus communicated with the bank, but we haven't gotten an answer. At this point in time, it seems to only make sense to hang on to that $1 million, use it to pay the upfront cost, and have enough money to cover the first 2 to 3 months worth of construction engineering. We project that to be around $35,000 a month. You will get reimbursed at 80%, but it will take a period of time for that money to come back. So we're thinking $1 million will be a nice nest egg to carry us through the early phases, and then we should be getting regular reimbursements. So optimistic, hopeful bid prices come in good, and the job sells the first time around.
Good.
Questions? Did I miss it?
I guess there's no questions on that. How about the planning services for capital improvement?
They are working on that. They have I hope spoken with almost all of us in the room. That's a part of their early data gathering process where they reach out to members of the community and ask what needs we all see for the community. And then you kind of hope when you do that that there are recurring topics that a lot of people have an interest in. So you start to build off of that. There will be a few really odd things that people suggest also. They are hopeful in August to have us something on that plan. So we're moving forward. We lost a little ground again with COVID, like so many things, and that's why they went to the Zoom meetings. But we're moving forward.
Any questions for Mr. May on the capital improvement plan?
Have you all had a chance to
Yes.
speak with them? Good.
And then an update on the Indiana Department of Health preparation of the community-wide bicycle and pedestrian master plan.
That seems to be an ongoing process. We haven't heard anything official, but the mayor has told me that he gets from time to time requests for information. Not to put words in the mayor's mouth, but I think he views it, and I view it as a positive that we're in the running and have a chance to get funded on the master plan. So it'll have to run its course on their schedule, and we'll see what happens with it.
Any questions for Mr. May on that? All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business, we have a representative from the Decatur County Auditor's Office to tell us about our spring property tax settlement.
Okay, I was told I was gonna answer questions, not give a presentation.
You don't have to give much presentation.
What do you need to know?
Looks like our total receipts were $314,663.17. Usually we're closer to $500,000. I guess the question I had, is that probably due to the reduced collections since you may have paid by May 10th and not until July 10th?
Correct. I went through, and a number of, within all three of your TIFs have paid by the May 11th, May 10th. But there are a few, Walmart, still, they've paid up to date, but they have not made the complete spring payment. So they have a little time. Then another, I think my deputy Rhonda has spoken to someone with Reedy, where Goodwill is now. They filed for a nonprofit. So that took like over $1 million out of your assessed value, so that's gonna reduce that expansion. No, that's the original TIF, a few thousand.
So we were short in the fall of 2018 as well, correct?
Shouldn't have been. 2018?
No, just 2019, I'm sorry, 18, 19. Yeah, we were short on that one as well, on the payment before this.
By how much? Did you, I mean, you, because
100,000 short.
Walmart didn't pay Janet.
I was gonna say, it's probably, again, a
Walmart.
a late payment,
And
which,
Staples as well, was Walmart and Staples with it too. Staples was short too.
okay, so.
And now Staples is gonna be Goodwill.
Well, half of it is,
Okay.
our piece of it, because there's two, you might have one addresses to it. It's not fully Goodwill, correct?
Correct.
So it's an vacant building at the moment,
Okay.
so I don't know who's agreed to pay those taxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you say short, again, depending on when they pay, whether you see it with settlement.
Right, I guess the biggest concern is making sure we have it right for financials, and that's what Reedy's working on. So it's hard to look at financials going forward if we're continually short, so, yeah, that's tough. Obviously not your lady's fault at all, but.
We can't predict.
Yeah, no, I get it, yeah, we get it,
We
I just,
could.
we're looking at the pieces of paper, you hope it's there, when it's not there, it sometimes tightens the budget up a little bit, so.
It does, it does. Nobody relate for that. Yeah, I can't predict
So do you expect that in the fall?
Well, I can tell you better on July 11th, after the treasurer certifies, you know, we can see who's paid and who's
Okay.
delinquent, so they can assess the late penalties.
Okay.
Then we'll know better, we'll cross our fingers.
Okay.
We've got a few big taxpayers in the county. They're gonna hold on to that money till July 9th, yeah. I can understand it.
Will we receive any settlement payments in like late July or early August?
No.
Or nothing till December?
Correct. At least that's the plan at the moment. Because it would be so short, I mean, that would just really kind of throw everybody into a panic.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
While Janet's here, I would like to introduce a topic not on your agenda. This is just for your information. No action will be taken.
Okay.
Am I in trouble?
You know, I don't like when you do things that aren't on the agenda. So just do it as just show it in the minutes as a point of information.
Okay. You all may remember a year or two ago, we had a situation where we had a parcel that was half in the TIF, or portion in the TIF district and a portion not in the TIF district. And that's a problem for the county. Maybe you can explain. I sort of understand why it's a problem for you. It's the assessment, if I get it correct.
It's the assessment, it's splitting it.
How you divide that up. So what we did then was took the balance of that into the district. We found another one like that across the street. And the property literally across the street, where the next travel plaza is coming, has a portion that's in the TIF district and the rest of it not in the TIF district. So it'll be on your agenda next month, I think, as to how we deal with this. So I don't know if there's anything you care to add that might help them, or.
Until, I don't know, but you do the resolution, you put it all in your TIF district, that's cool. It's just slivers of land hang out there,
Yeah.
and we're trying to clean it up.
Could you tell them what our conversation was about earlier about when that value becomes associated?
Okay, so assessed values are effective January 1 of each year. So anything after that goes into the next tax year. It's strictly up to the assessor's judgment whether construction is 50% complete, then she may go ahead and assess it at 50% complete, and then the following year do it at 100% if it is. But again, she relies on, she outsources to ad valorem, who does pick up all of her commercial and residential new construction. So those kind of questions you could direct to her, but it does make a difference what you're expecting to see in assessed values.
Okay.
Is that?
In the certificate of occupancy.
Well, and the assessor also goes by the certificate of occupancy, so if it's in the city, then she would get that from Sarah?
Building office, yeah.
Yes. And the county would be from the area plan. So again, depending on when she gets those.
Okay.
Okay? Is there anything
Great.
else? Call my office if you
Thank
need
you.
anything.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Mr. Gary Schmidt from Reedy Financial Services, if you'll give us an update on financial review and cash flow.
Yeah, well, like you said, Gary Smith, Reedy Financial Group. In front of each of you, I've got a packet labeled your Greensburg REC financial updates. And the purpose of this, I think, was to go over the report in detail and kind of disclose just thoroughly what exactly we've been working on and kind of the product you guys can expect to see moving forward. So what you see in front of you is a nearly complete plan. I know there's a lot of time on the front end building it out, so a lot of gathering resolutions, parcel lists, things of that sort, financials, building out historical information, revenue projections, things of that nature. So we're nearly complete. I think the last few items we need, there's some trustee information on some bonds outstanding that we're gonna need to get still. But other than that, we're just about there. So if we go to page 3, I know the commission and officers, I believe we got this off the website, and I think that may be dated, so I've made some notes here to update that with all the folks sitting here today, so we'll update that for this moving forward. But really, this plan in its totality is all of your reporting requirements, with the exception of your impact statement. So every year there's an impact statement that must be completed and gone over in front of the Redevelopment Commission. Outside of that, this report covers that. So your annual report, all that's built into here. There's parcel level information in here which will flow under neutralization. So don't think of this as something that's entirely separate and that reporting requirements are more. They are one and the same. So reporting on the commission and the officers, that's part of the requirement for the April reporting requirement. Down at the bottom, and I'm just going to go over this in detail. I'm sure you guys know some of these things already, but for those of you that may not, TIF districts obviously are subject to expiration, and the expiration of those allocation areas or TIF districts is dependent on when the declaratory resolution was signed. So we have two notable areas. One, the original area declared in year 2000, and the first expansion declared in 2006. So knowing that, if we extrapolate that based on the statutes at the time, we anticipate the original State Road 3 corridor development to expire in pay 30. So 10 years of runway for the Redevelopment Commission. Obviously a very important note for planning, it's 59% of the revenue. So in 10 years, 59% of revenue will be expiring at assessed value. The other portion, 17 years, so just over, or just under half, we'll have an additional 17 years from 2000. So we like to keep track of that information and have that included on the plan. Page 4 is your monthly cash balance by fund. So this is just simply your state road corridor allocation area. And this document's important because it shows overall cash flow month by month. You know, you may see plans from one year to the next, and those plans incorporate a December settlement at the end. And when you incorporate a December settlement at the end, it doesn't account for all the expenditures that you may have between January and June until your next large increase in next receipt in revenue. So if you guys are planning, you have things going on, there's projects you want to do, paying attention to cash flow is very important, considering when those outflows are going to be. For instance, in this plan, and this is just based on annualizing revenues and annualizing expenditures, based on our conversations with Mark, you can see in 2021, you can kind of see what those cash flows look like. So even though the ending cash balance in 2021 is a current projected at 464, it does get a little bit skinny there in that October and November range, and that's definitely something to consider. So again, there's some assumptions behind there. That's what it looks like sitting here in, I guess, April 2020. So jump into page 5. I had quite a bit to cover on this one, and you know, the county auditor was able to address some questions. We mentioned, you know, the assessed value is kind of the lifeblood of a redevelopment commission. The health of those allocation areas are very important to bringing in revenue on an annual basis. So, like we mentioned, in 2018, 43,446,000 was the total captured increment, 42,663. So, you know, we're down what, $1.2 million year over year, and we know that we did a little bit of research in the assessor's office. This is something that we do as well. Parcel by parcel analysis. What are the parcels doing? How you guys are deriving revenue? Are they going down? Are they healthy? Why are they going down? If they're going down too much, do we want to advise on taking them out? So you know, analyzing the revenues is very, very important. And annually, as the county auditor can tell you, the TIF neutralization process is how you derive these numbers. So we take a parcel by parcel approach to that, go through, reconcile all the changes, and really capitalize on all the value and making sure that we're capturing all the assessed value that the RDC should be capturing. So one of the things we saw, the AV was going down on a couple of those parcels we mentioned. There was a base rate change on some of them. I think there were some new exemptions on some of them, specifically the Walmart and the Staples properties. So those were two things of note that we would want to spend a little bit more time looking at to understand. All that's kind of detailed in our revenue analysis. So that's all I really had on that. In addition, I guess going back to the neutralization, we worked hand in hand with the county auditor's office. Ultimately, they're responsible for submitting the neutralization. inputting the neutralization factor into the parcel or into the software, and then that spits out what your net assessed value is going to be for the ensuing year. But oftentimes across the state, we see material errors in the software and how it handles the allocation of these neutralization factors. As a matter of fact, in some communities, one specifically one that I'm thinking of, just by pointing out software deficiencies and making it a recommendation on parcels, that entity received $600,000 more annually in revenue just for paying attention to those things. So, while I can't guarantee there's opportunities in the parcel list, I would find that it's probably likely that there's something that could be addressed, something that may be taken out, something that could be fixed, that would result in increases in collections, or at least, the same collections in the future as opposed to deteriorating over time. So page 6, this is the one obviously you can spend the most time on. We really rely on the Redevelopment Commission, and I want to obviously apologize. Normally, when we get engaged to do these plans, we're meeting with the Redevelopment Commission very early in the process. This plan's only as good as the information that we're receiving from the commission and incorporating their plan and their vision going forward. So Mark's been fantastic. I know we've spoken to a few of you commissioners as well on putting this whole thing together. So, starting out at the very far left, you can see in 2018, we track 2 years historical revenue and expenditure information. We track the 2020 projection and where we're at as of, it just so happens this one's through April 30th, and then 2 years of projections. We've gone out as much as 10, it just depends on what you guys want to see. But as to the far left, we start with the state grants, interest, loan draw, and intertip revenue collections. And then as we go down, you'll see all the capital outlays that were actual expenditures for 2018. And then down at the very bottom, you see the pass-through calculation of 36%. So this is what I mean by this report flows directly into your annual reporting requirements. You guys just did the annual TIF pass-through calculation. You're justifying, yes, we have sufficient need in the ensuing year to retain our incremental assessed value. That percentage is part of that calculation. This is what goes into the mailers that you guys have sent out back in June. So that comes right off this page. You can track the year-ending fund balance, $1,589,000, and that jumps right to the top of 2019 and works its way back down. So again, $903,000, like we talked about earlier, it's about $100,000 less, and that was due to delinquencies. Normally, the auditor's abstract provides a tremendous amount of detail to where we could go in and identify and isolate exactly where those delinquencies are and communicate that with the commission in real time. Unfortunately, the auditor's abstract has been revised heavily, and it's not as detailed as it used to be, but we're working with the state on getting more detailed information for not only Greensburg, but for all of our clients. So, I mean, I can't promise, but usually delinquencies, obviously the way that works is it gets paid at some point because it is owed. Then going down to 2019 capital outlays, you see the Veterans Parkway, all your debt payments, other services and charges. Again, your pass-through calculation percentage, and then the cash balance is 751. Going up to the top of 2020, TIF revenue collections, $920,000. So we mentioned before, there are some things that pop up throughout the course of the year, whether it be, COVID-19 or folks not paying their tax bill or whatever it may be. Due to the COVID pandemic, we've assumed that 10% of the allocation will not be collected, and that's an assumption. Likely that number should be closer to $1 million. So if it comes in more than that, that's great, but obviously we don't want to plan on that. $314,000 was what was collected in the first part, and again, like the county auditor mentioned, we expect some of that can be available later. Now, it doesn't appear based on your monthly cash flow as we looked at earlier that you guys are going to run into a cash flow problem, but there's what's called an advanced tax draw. It's a statutory, and the county auditor knows about this. I don't know if redevelopment commissions qualify for it. I know cities do. They could petition the county auditor and say, we would like whatever's on file, whatever's in the account that's been paid to date on this, and they release up to 95% of those dollars to you. That's available for cities, towns, counties. The statute, to my knowledge, is not exactly clear on RDCs. It's not.
The last time I looked at it, I'm going completely off the top of my head, shooting that. I think it's not super clear as to whether or not TIF falls into it, redevelopment commissions fall under a separate statutory scheme. But it's certainly something I can look into, if that's what you'd like to know more about it. But I don't think it's not a straight, it's not like cities, towns, county, like cities and towns, that's a given, you go ask for it, but I don't.
I did ask an RDC attorney as well, a friend from, and he mentioned that it was not. I just saw a memo from the AO Auditor State mentioning something along those lines, and I wanted to look at it some more, but definitely something that may be out there regardless. I think that 10% is a decent assumption going forward, even if we don't collect it. Again, I think the cash flow is in great position where we are. So going down, obviously capital projects, like you mentioning, Veterans Parkway, that's a big part of this. We're working with Mark very closely. There's a lot of moving pieces there with the 2014 draw bonds that we're tracking along with Mark. There's the grant coming in as well, so kind of, working out that cash flow in a manner that's, concise and consistent and correct is the key here, obviously. And everyone's been doing a very good job in that regard because, there's a lot of moving pieces there. So debt payments down there at the bottom you'll see, and then professional services, we've just plugged an assumption in, and then we have a year-end fund balance there. As it sits at the end of April, $454,000. I know Mark has a more up-to-date version today, not net of the claims that you would approve today. So that is just through April 30th. I don't know if you guys would be interested in this or not, but some clients, what we do is we have this plan. Once it's built, it's very routine in nature. You send us your claims in advance of your meeting. We drop the claims in, this updates, and you get this for every single meeting. To where when you're approving claims, you know exactly what the cash balance is after you approve the claims. You know where you're at with the contracts, which we'll go over here in a minute. But sometimes that's value added. And then out to the far right, 2021, 2022 projections. Again, we can go out as far as we want. You can see the debt payments on there, things of that nature. What's available for other projects, and this will give you the ability to see, something comes up and we plug this in this year. What does it do to cash flow? What does it do to year-ending fund balance? What are AVs trending to do? Can we afford to do this? All those sorts of things. With the TIF expiration built into this thing too, this plan will only go out 8 more years for half of your revenue, so it'd be definitely something that's important to consider. So that's the meats really of the plan is this page right here on page 6. Page 7, this is your RDC contracts page. This is a recent addition to the plan. But what we found was oftentimes, you'll hire engineers, architects, financial consultants, or whatever. You have a contractual amount that you agree to at the onset of the contract. We aim to keep track of those, and for each claim that you approve, we drop that into the bucket for which contract that it's approved for, and there's no longer any speculation as to are we overpaying these contracts, are we being invoiced more than what we agreed to. We keep track of those things in real time. That would be another asset to have, I think, as you're approving monthly claims. What does the contracts page look like? How far into this contract are we? How much more is there left to pay? This really aims to solve all those issues there. And you can see Veterans Parkway, all the different things too that are remaining, and kind of where we're at with that.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
does the right of way have off the money that we will be getting back from?
I don't have what you have in front of you.
Okay. Is it net of grants that you're asking? Like net of the grant money?
No, it was, grant money for
That's a good question.
the
Normally,
amount we agreed to pay for that parcel as well.
yeah, I suspect we got this information directly from Mark on the
What does it
contracts.
show? Shows we only paid 43%
You get you a copy.
of right of way, so there's still a contract remaining 1.25. My question was, is that 1.25?
That one
Part
point
of
two
that.
five has already been paid.
It says it's amount remaining there.
This was through April also.
Oh, through April, okay.
Yeah, this is
So it's
the-
after April we got that.
Yep.
And that
I see.
1.25 has already been paid.
So it's done, so that'd be 100%. Okay,
So that's completed.
okay.
And we have received the 80% reimbursement of 1.25.
That was the question.
That shows the updated fund balance I have reflects that $1 million reimbursement.
Okay. That's what showed 43%, I just didn't know.
Okay.
If that was something coming, obviously, our cash
Yeah,
situations.
normally, we'll work closely with the clerk treasurer's office on getting the detailed revenues and expenditure reports for the previous month, and this will just be a reflection of what she sends us, the plan essentially through date. And then once we get the claims, we pop that in, and it's simply where we were plus the claims. That's where we're at. We agree with the contracts page. So yeah, I apologize. This is a little bit dated. You're right.
No, you're fine, I just didn't know what you could.
Yeah, good question. So page 8, this is your indebtedness. There's not a ton to go over on this page, but basically the 2014 bonds, they're somewhat confusing just because they're draw in nature. You draw them down, you pay them back. You draw them down, you pay them back. That functions more like a line of credit, essentially, more so than traditional bonds. And for that reason, it's always a moving target to kind of tie to it, predict what your payments are going to be. But we've been working with the trustee and Mark, and we got some good data in there. A couple more things. This isn't really related to anything on this page, but just some notes that I made, and some other areas that we might want to start considering or thinking about. There's a Honda TIF, obviously, with the county. We've read through the bond documents on that. It's not incredibly straightforward. It's a fairly sophisticated transaction that happens. We've spoken to some of our bond counsel attorneys, friends around town, and kind of got their opinion on the spirit of the agreement. But the long and the short of it is we've not really looked at the Honda TIF deal all that much. And what we would propose is, because this deal was so sophisticated in nature, there's a waterfall. When I say waterfall, I mean, as Honda's is paying TIF, it's paying off various debt instruments across the county and the city. And due to the fact that it's kind of difficult to follow, we would want to go through it and just make sure that everything has been handled in accordance with the agreement, dating all the way back to when it was first started. And maybe it has. But I do think there's some value in going back and kind of looking at all of those things to see, because usually, turn over a rock, we usually can find some things, whether or not it's material or not, that's a different story, but definitely something that we like to look at. And then page 9, this is your amortization schedule as it sits. Again, it's a moving target every time we look at it. So this is just where it sits as of the last time we updated it. All your principal amounts, how much you've withdrawn, what the interest rate on it is, what the interest expense is, period total, what the principal amount is, all those good things. So I guess in conclusion, again, we usually collaborate with the RDC early on. We had a kickoff meeting that we scheduled when we first, get engaged with the new city, RDC. We worked through this plan hand in glove for a few months, and then usually it's in a good spot. Obviously, COVID's kind of set us back a little bit from doing that. I know we had a Zoom call on that before, and we communicated that, but wanted to reiterate that. The other thing is, obviously we're always keeping updated records. We're working hand in glove with the Clerk Treasurer's Office. We're tracking all the claims, we're tracking all the contracts, making sure there's not any overpayments. Projecting the revenues, I would say, is probably the most important thing. That is a very, very difficult task that the County Auditor's Office is tasked with. It's not very straightforward. It's very confusing. The abstract is probably tens of thousands of cells and how it's calculated. And also the software systems. We've noticed massive discrepancies between county to county with software systems and how they handle certain situations that are detrimental to redevelopment commissions, and pointing out those things and taking advantage of them when we can. Revenue mistakes, software issues like we talked about. There's what we call decrement analysis. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not. But basically what decrement is, think of it as you TIF an area, you get a new building that comes in, there's $100,000 of new construction, that's $100,000 of capturable assessed value that you're going to capture for your allocation area. That's a good parcel you want it to have. On the other side of that, you may have another parcel in the allocation area that's sitting there, and it's destroyed by a fire, and it loses $50,000 of value. Well, that negative $50,000 and that positive $100,000 nets to $50,000, and now you're collecting value on only the $50,000. But you can go through, and periodically values on properties that aren't really fruitful for the Redevelopment Commission, sometimes they just go down, and collectively you may have 30, 50, 100, 200 parcels that are negative in value, that you can go in and take those out, and getting rid of that increases your value just because you don't have that negative effect on the allocation anymore. So we call that a TIF decrement analysis, which is the removal of bad parcels. it's the same process of doing a new allocation area, declaratory resolution, plan commission, city council, and back to you guys for during. Just on today?
Sorry?
I didn't know if you had some question. Okay. Let's see. So opportunities, we talked about Honda TIF, looking through the bonds, see if there's any, errors in how it's been handled in the past. Maybe there has, maybe there hasn't, decrement. Strategic planning, like we discussed, cash flow is important. 59% of the revenue is going away in 10 years, important to plan for. And I would say above all else, the number one thing that we try to communicate is education, availability. We're always available to answer our phone for questions, we're always around. TIF impacts is a big thing that redevelopment commissions statutorily have to do now. You send out a notice to all their blocking taxing districts saying our allocation areas are detrimental to this extent to your individual unit. There's a lot of misinformation about how rates and levies are handled in this state. We see a lot of bad information. So communicating, we call it the reality of TIF. And I won't get into it too much. We spent almost 2 hours a day presenting on this exact topic. So it's important to get the facts. It's important to know what the true impact is, because that's the spirit of the statute in your reporting requirement. So that's really all I had on the plan update. That's what the plan is. It's the value we're trying to add, I suppose, and we're here for any questions you may have.
So was there a question of how far out we want to see this? Was that one of the questions you had? Whether we want to stop at that 2022 or keep going?
Yeah, as is the case with any projection, whether it be local government, whether it be corporate America, the further you go out, the more inaccurate it becomes. We don't know what the revenues are going to be. Normally, we just try to say it's at least going to stay the same. Sometimes we do some things with abatements to see what kind of abatements you have on file, what's rolling off, what kind of value is that going to generate. So we totally can. I think that's something like for a monthly meeting. I think this is like 2 years. It's just perfect because it's like that's what's right now. For long-term strategic conversations or meetings, specifically in that scope, I think long-term plans make all the sense in the world. Especially, if you were talking about debt instruments or debt wraps or things like that, you want to see how are we paying this back? How does that 10-year expiration play into all of this? And that would be very, very important. So yeah, I think it just depends on the setting.
Is that something we want to move ahead with now, or would we be wise to wait until after we get our capital plan from our construction point in 4 or 5 months? And
I would say if it,
because that'll have some cost projections and things on the project list.
I would say this would take very little time to do a 10-year projection on. Because what we would do is we just copy the rows out, and from there we would just extrapolate your bond payments out 10 years, or 20 or 17 years, I guess, is the whole time. Then you can see that revenue drop off and what it looks like with everything outstanding. Or that could even be an addendum to the back of this thing too, if you wanted, because I know that you may want to see that on a daily basis.
I think with the Honda TIF money and the water bond we're paying, that's something that may need to be done in the future. If we did do something like a bridge, a $12 million project, like we already looked at once this year. Maybe it doesn't need done today, maybe it's something to revisit, but if we come back to a $12 million project and we're looking at something and the state needs to see if we're gonna have funding, we may need to put the Honda TIF money in there. Might need to be looked at anyway. The contract was redone. Appendix E, how we spend money, last year, so it might be looked at anyway, now that we're closer to, we're still 3 years out, but still closer in time. I don't know if it needs done today, but it's something I think we should think about at some point.
Maybe we wait 3, 4, 5 months to our construction point.
Yeah, I agree. I think the most immediate question I would have, do you guys see the value in having this updated monthly? Because if so, we could get, if we work with the treasurer, she would send us the information we would need. And this plan's structured as such to where we drop information into a pivot table in Excel and it populates the fields. So on a month-to-month basis, it doesn't take a lot of time to update. And to be honest, it's easier to if it's constantly updated in real time, we don't have to go back and get gobs of invoice data. So,
It'd be easier to do monthly as opposed to every 6 months.
exactly, yeah. Because we have some folks that, they may have 60 or 100 invoices, you input all those things, but then it's been 6 months, now it's a huge information request that they have to, it's cumbersome on the clerk's treasurer's office, it really is, to have to do, that level of detail, to where if it's something that's more like systematic and on a monthly basis by these days, these are the reports that we get. It sometimes it's a little bit smoother, I suppose, but we do it quarterly, we do it semi-annually, we do it monthly for some folks, it really depends on what you guys want to do.
I guess looking at dollars and cents, is it less expense for us to do it every month, or
I would-
less expense to do it quarterly?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be less to do every on a monthly basis, and you have up-to-date financials at all times for any decision.
With that, I think you said clerk treasurer's office by such and such date every month, they just want to
Yeah,
forward the information to
yeah.
you.
And I don't know what your guys' policy
And we
is.
get it also, so.
Yeah, I don't know what your guys' policy is on, like, what's the cutoff for claims, and when does a claim sheet go to the redevelopment commission and all that kind of stuff. We have some folks that do it 3 p.m. the day of, and that makes doing this really hard. But Thursday before the meeting, that works well, or Monday before the meeting, whichever it is, yeah.
Okay, well, that's my bid Monday this year.
I'm either way, I think the fun, detailed history that we're getting now, and we'll start with some of that as well. It's a lot more information, it just depends on what you want. Reedy's information is gonna be a lot more to look at, and people see value, I'm either way. Whatever it says.
I'm just thinking about it from the standpoint that their information is the current, as opposed to trying to access that every 6 months. And the cost involved with that.
A lot of moving parts right now, so it
Yeah.
won't hurt.
Mr. Fuller, your thoughts?
I'm kind of thinking the same way Mr. Dornick is, that's, we have the information, a lot easier to digest monthly than 6 months.
We need to.
And the trainers on it do a good job for us.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
I think that
we would, if we could get the information, your meetings are on the 4th Thursday.
Third,
We-
usually third.
Third.
Usually third Thursday.
Okay, so if we got the information by the 2nd Thursday, we would have that prepared and on to Reedy to have that back in time for your board meetings. Is that sufficient for you?
Yeah, it is for us.
And we would do that on a monthly basis, we have it ready by the 2nd Thursday, okay? If we had all of the information by the 2nd Thursday, we would be sending Reedy the information on Friday, and then have time to get it back to you before your board meeting on Thursday, so that you could review it in your Dropboxes or however you get your information.
That's
And if
all
we
Mark,
could
all
get-
there with claims, that'd be you guys getting the claims, not us.
Normally claims, this month, because of the latency of your meeting, we got one that came Friday. I dropped it off Monday.
Mark generally prepares.
I try to prepare the claims and have them in as quick as they come to me. I don't know about all your claims for your other consultants that you have under contract right now, because I haven't seen any of those come through yet. I don't think there has been any. But it's American Construction Point on one. And I can work with them as trying to get their construction engineering. I think they bill it monthly. I can try to push them to get that to me earlier. In other words, I need that by the
Second Thursday.
second Wednesday, so I can get the claim
Yeah.
process turned in by the second Thursday.
And-
Because historically, their bills come about 2 days after your meeting. In other words, if you would have met last Thursday, the invoice came last Friday afternoon, it got emailed to me, so I turned it in Monday morning.
And if we know something's coming that we're expecting, we'll work with Reedy to get those dates done. Not every month, but I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be a situation where we're going to need to adjust, yes.
In other words, that's the big one, we're gonna have every month for the next 18 to 20 months. when we go to pre-con, we'll just stress the fact that we need to have their month-end bill by the second Wednesday of the month. And I think they can do that for us, because they'll be
Sometimes
processed.
that'd be the eighth, could be as early as the eighth of the,
I know,
but it could be as late as the 14th, so.
see, they're waiting on timesheets to come from somebody that's working here remotely. So if they got a 1 week lag in pay, it's pushing them to the eighth, but we can try our best.
It's gonna be all.
And if we hold it up, if we have to hold it up for a couple of days, then we can still email you the claims that you're gonna anticipate seeing, we can still get that done.
Be a problem.
If that, yeah, if we get the claims, and I think, like I said, the one we just had this week was, we got 4 revised claim sheets the day of the meeting. So if it's a week before and there's one that comes in after that, that's not a huge deal.
That sounds good. No, we need that in form of a motion.
I'll always err on the side of motion, so yeah. So you need a motion to approve Reedy financials.
Monthly reporting.
So move.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Al.
I would, I don't know if this is just me or not. If there's a way to get this prior to the meeting, email it to us or whatever, so we're not digesting it here. I think there's a value.
Would it be helpful, some folks we prefer this for monthly and we send it to them. There's a few folks that we actually attend their monthly meetings and do exactly what we just did today. If you just want to get it monthly, we can do that. It would save money. Or if you'd like to have it,
easy. That's
Yeah.
probably easy enough. And
yep. I think we, I want you to, it's explained once. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. What pages are important, cash flow contracts, and then the,
Yeah, nice.
Maybe a biannual meeting or something,
Yeah.
or annual meeting.
we like to do, at least just one annual meeting, because then we sit down and we say, what's strategic planning, what's going on, and that's over the report. And you'll see us for the reporting requirements, if you have your April 15th reporting requirement, or June 15th, or your TIF impact, you'll see us for those too, because there's a public hearing involved with that, and sit down and explain the impact and what we're doing, and all that kind of stuff too. So usually, I guess I didn't think of that, usually just the reporting requirements in themselves put us in front of you about 3 to 4 times a year anyways, so that may be sufficient.
Council, would you, say that motion again, please, repeat the motion.
Oh, yeah, just a motion to approve Reedy financial transitioning to a monthly, gathering and reporting process.
Okay, thank you.
That was, Dornick, we don't know.
Okay.
Just all.
Any other questions? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Our next item, Mr. May, authorization for clerk treasurer to spend funds for fire department.
Last month, in your meeting, you all authorized the expenditure of up to $150,000. It was part of your Rebecca Park component for the fire park project. We are working on the building for restrooms, concession, that sort of thing. So today, really, Brenda and I have been talking about the proper vehicle for dealing with your money on this. And if I remember correctly, we went through a couple things today, but I think we ended up that we would create a new fund. And with your authorization, take $150,000 of your money and put it in a separate fund. It'll still be your money.
I happen to be fortunate enough that the state board of accounts is in City Hall now. And
That's
so,
unfortunate.
yeah. But anyway, she was at City Hall today, so I had an opportunity to talk with her. She cannot advise us, of course, but I did get a head nod from her when I said, so tonight, if they make a motion and approve up to $150 in expenses to Pirate Park, yeah, what'd I say? I've done that all day, haven't I? Okay, you know what you're gonna get, Pirate Park. Okay, so if you make that motion, then, I will work with her and we will set a fund, and it would be separate fund than what that is, so you'll know what the spend down is. You'll know that that 150,000 is dedicated to Pirate Park, and it will not show on your net line. Okay, it'll show off of your net line that you don't have that to spend, you don't have that to use, and yet when we get to 150,000 in claims, we stop paying. Okay, if we get $150,010 in one claim, that claim will be stopped until I have your approval to pay it. Okay?
Or we'll find the money somewhere else.
Now, of course, at our meeting last month, we passed the motion to pay the $150,000.
Did you? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
They've already approved it, so you.
Okay, so now move forward with the state board of accounts and set up your fund, and we'll do that. Okay. Sounds great, thank you.
And we will not be bringing you individual claims each month.
We don't want to prove.
Right,
That's
you
that's
have,
why we were having.
that's the reason I had the discussion with her today, is that you do not have to approve each claim. We have now the authority to pay up to 150,000. And when it gets to that, we stop. Good?
Clean, we do not need a
Thank you.
motion to move to another account then? No. Okay.
Not at this time. If we come back and if they tell us, we'll have it there and we'll do the.
We're good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.